I'll make a start. So nice and comfortable in the chair. Your hands together. Tapping over your face. Quite a rapid movement. Over your head and neck. One shoulder. The other side. Upper part of your chest. Belly. And your legs. Good. Give your hands a little shake. Let me just put my sign on the door to stop anybody coming in. So it's important when we're exercising or about to start doing something to try and take that sort of chill off, and particularly as we come into autumn, the mornings can be a bit chilly. It takes a little while for the body to adjust, and so apart from anything else, there's other advantages as well. But this little tapping exercise is quite a good way to start off that process. It just gets the blood running a bit, and of course you're actually moving just a little bit faster. So it's a useful exercise. Now, feet out and sit back in your chair. Feel your weight dropping back, hips dropping into the chair a little bit. Feeling your shoulders sort of falling backwards and outwards. Just letting any tightness that's built up in your body begin to drain away. Feel your breathing perhaps change a little bit. Reminding yourself of this feeling of downward movement through your body as a consistent thing. It's always there. Gravity is always there. The question is, can we be aware of it? And it's always acting on our body. And really, one of the key things that we're looking to work with is to not interrupt that process, to not move and to sit and to stand in such a way that we strain against that downward movement, but rather blend with it, harmonize with it. So this can be a good position to do that in. It's, your body's quite well supported, hopefully. You can also do it laying back on the floor or on your bed or something like that. And it can be quite surprising how much tightness, how much tension we hang on to. And then coming into the upright position and just going through the same process again. And effectively, what we want to do is to see this as a continual process. We have the habit, and it's quite a hard habit to break, of stiffening up against that force of gravity or any other force acting on our body. And so it's a bit like breathing in and breathing out. You don't have to think about it. It just happens quite naturally. And in the same way, kind of ticking away in the background. We want this constant sort of effort, well, not effort really, but letting go to allow that draining away. So don't be surprised when it comes back, but just remember, because I think memory is a very useful thing here, becoming familiar with the feeling, so that rather than having to think about sinking down all the time, what we become aware of is those moments when we're not, when we're actually stiffening up, and it feels odd and it feels unusual. So this is replacing one habit with another, and that takes time, repetition, practice to build. And then turning your head. So as you move, there's another part of your awareness that you're not even having to be consciously aware of. Is monitoring your hips, your shoulders, and so on and so forth. Just as there's a part of your awareness that would realize if your hair suddenly slipped in front of your face, you wouldn't have to stop and think, oh, what's going wrong? How do I deal with this? You would actually just brush your hair out of your eyes. And then the shoulders. And then going forwards. And then hands out to your sides, winding around. So here, for instance, as you move your hands out, you may well as also stiffened up in the shoulders. But if you can just feel the weight of your arms and you register that, you'll find that you start to drop your shoulders down. And then winding around. So this effort that we make to release, to relax, isn't just applying to you, it applies to everybody. Some of the most common phrases that I hear delivered in Tai Chi classes, in martial arts classes, and at all levels, including right up to sort of very high level players, things like relax, that we're always being told, relax, slow down, go back the other way. Move your feet is another one. move from your feet, use your feet, because that's another thing that we lose very easily. Rest, and then easing forwards. It's one of the reasons I think that everyday activities like the one we were just doing, winding our wrists around, become quite difficult because we tend to do them unconsciously without any sense of awareness of how we're doing them. As soon as we try and bring that awareness in, it can feel very awkward. Again, it's time and practice. Remembering the words, if you like, from the class over and over again, and recognizing that these are the things that underlie everything that we do in Tai Chi. And then turn. And again, another one is that we turn from the center. Again and again and again, we find ourselves doing this, twisting the body around, turning the head, but not turning the body, rather than turning from here. And in the other direction, remember turning in your hips and your waist. We can incorporate different images, different ideas to help us with this sort of thing. So for instance, if you imagine you've got a little sort of torch, like a spotlight in your navel, that spotlight should be shining out towards your knee at this point. And then when we go into the turning movements, it shines around the room. And you don't need to then think about what your shoulders are supposed to be doing, because they will follow. You just need to make sure that actually you're not doing anything to prevent that. So you're not stiffening in your back or something like that. And then back the other way. You want to make sure that as you come back to the upright position each time, you haven't slipped into that habit of stiffening up, or rather noticing that you have slipped into that habit and deliberately encouraging your shoulders to drop, your rib cage to drop again. So that rather than it being something that you do and then move on from, it becomes an integral part of what you're actually doing. And come back to the upright position, and then pull your heel up and push out. And those little habits that we notice become more and more subtle. So the ones I've described are really, in some ways, quite obvious, but think about how you're moving your leg. Are you straining in your upper back or your shoulders simply to move your leg? You don't need to do that. The other side. So taking care about how we move, about how we do what are actually everyday activities for most of us. And that becomes fascinating in itself, I think, and very absorbing. It's a good way to really focus your attention. But we realize how much we take for granted. Simply stepping is something that we do all the time. And yet, you know, how much do we really pay attention to that? So, you know, all these complicated movements feed back into very, very simple movements. And it's often quite amazing when that happens. So now, just back in your chair, hands out to your sides. So going forward and feeling your hands slide around the pillow again. Feeling, as always with this movement, what's happening in ribs and upper back. Your chest sort of folds in, it closes, the back opens, and then the back closes, the chest opens. And so that movement takes its lead, as it were, from the transfer of your weight as you begin to move your weight forwards. So that's, if you like, the signal for your chest to close as you go back. It's the signal for the back to close. And feeling the effect that that has on your arms. So what I was saying about everyday movement, that means nothing to you. You're thinking, well, what's he on about? I don't feel anything. The thing isn't to strain with this movement, but to go back to some of those earlier movements when we did this without the weight moving, when we were moving the elbows around, and to keep doing that until you do notice it. It can take quite a while. And then fisherman cast a net. And then rolling the ball in. Overall, all these things add up to a particular feel in the movement, a particular quality in the movement. And a loss of that quality of the movement is a message to us to reconsider some of those very, very basic things. We don't make the movement feel like this, we allow the movement to feel like this. So if you've lost that feeling in the movement, are you still moving from your feet and from your center? Is your weight still sinking down? Are your shoulders still stiff? And is there that movement in your chest and your upper back? All those questions should be answered before we get to the obvious question, which is, oh, what's he doing with his hands? And then going back. And that can sound very tiresome, but actually, if you practice that method, that approach to the movement, then again, you will find yourself doing it automatically. When I say you ask the question, it's a kind of subconscious thing. Like if you were listening to the radio and it went fuzzy, you'll just tune it in more. You wouldn't have to think, oh, right, kind of what did it say? Oh, it's got a bit fuzzy, hold on a second, then you tune it in and it's okay. But if you let yourself dwell on the, oh, what's he doing with his hands? How is he doing that overly much, then that automatic asking of them and answering of the questions won't build for you. And then pushing away. And then hands fisted. And turning out. And bringing your hands in and push. So we want to try and make sure when we practice that as much as possible we practice correctly. And that's not just about, well, it isn't really about, certainly in the first instance, have I got my hand in the right place? But these inner qualities, are my shoulders still soft? Am I using my hips and my feet? Those are the things that we really want to be hardwired into our system. and then changing. And heart and clouds. Again, have you begun to speed up? It's a very, very common thing. I remember once with one of my teachers, each was demonstrating the movements that we'd been learning. And I started up, and the teacher immediately said, slow down. So I slowed down. And at the end of it, he looked at me and said, that was a bit fast. I thought, well, but I really slowed down. I thought I'd slowed down, but clearly not. And then bringing your hand in and back to rooting down, these three together. Following the movement. And this is another habit that we want to develop, to be aware of the movement. And in a class like this, to have that as our primary focus all the time. And your attention will drift off. And then what we want to do is to get into the habit of very gently bringing our attention back, not thinking, I'm useless, I can't do this. Because if that's true, it's true for everybody. But rather just acknowledging that there's been that wandering in our attention and responding to it with a sense of kindness. One more round. And then dragon plucks the stars from the sky. in two directions. At the turn, again, remember the turn, your hips and your waist, not your shoulders or your head twisting around. Not too far. This is another habit that we have, that we feel as though we've got to move as far as possible. Remember that feeling of space, smooth movement within your body. Maintain that. Don't, you may occasionally push out a little bit too far, but recognize that, oh, this has gone too far. Begin to recognize the signs of that point being reached. It's like if you go somewhere that you haven't been before, you have to pay quite careful attention to sort of like where you turn left and right and so on and so forth. If you're used to going there, then you kind of know in advance and you're already ready without having to think about it. So again, it's the practice that is important. One foot out. Then going forwards, grasping the tiger's ears, hands twisted. And again, have you tightened up your hands and your fingers as you bring them into the fist? Another very common habit. other side. And then hands twisted. Rocking your weight forwards and backwards. And combining it now with the turn. So we did this before when we go around in the circle, but what you're doing now is out and back, and then out to the other side and back. Feeling your weight flow into your feet a little bit. And then hitting the ball in front of your shoulder. Do one more on each side. And then the cow gazes at the moon. And we're back to the center. And out again. And then from here, parting the wild horse's mane. One more time. Hold the ball on either side and circle. And then back the other way. And rest. This bringing back of our attention can be a very stressful process if we're not careful, because it happens so often that we lose the focus of our attention. I came across a really nice image on a meditation, on a guided meditation that I have on record, where the person leading the meditation at one point described this waywardness of our thoughts as being a bit like a puppy dog. And when we train a puppy, we don't get annoyed at the puppy. We say, well, stay, sit, and the puppy gets up on one and says, stay, sit. It's just part and parcel. It's what you expect. And our mind is a little bit like that. I think that's quite a nice image to sort of bring in, to just remind, oh, it's gone away again, come back, rather than, well, I've got to drag myself back, if you see what I mean. There's nothing to be gained in that harshness towards ourselves. And again, it just becomes part and parcel of how we move. I've yet to come across anybody making any kind of comment about something that they find difficult that is unique. Mostly when people say to me, I have trouble doing this, my response is, yeah, I do too. Occasionally, it's not something that I've experienced myself, but something that I've seen in other people. But 90% of the time, I would say that what you're experiencing is the same as what I'm experiencing. So just rubbing your hands together and tapping them in the face. This time, a bit more focused perhaps, because we actually want to prepare ourselves for standing. Your head. You don't want to be half asleep when you try and stand. And the other side. Apart from your chest. Your belly. Good. And then stand it. One of the reasons we so easily sort of slip out of the correct posture is because it can be uncomfortable. We have to be prepared to work at it so that our body adjusts to the new posture. Somebody once said that when we learn an art like Tai Chi, it's a bit like wearing in a new pair of shoes. You put the new pair of shoes on and you don't just go walking for miles because they're probably a bit stiff and you'll get blisters. Doesn't mean they're a bad pair of shoes, but it does mean that you need to take time to kind of wear them in so that the shoes mold themselves to the shape of your foot. And in the same way, the very subtle change in posture can feel uncomfortable. Going back to what I was saying about, what you're experiencing, what the teachers experience, and so on and so forth. In about my third or fourth year of doing Tai Chi, I was getting tremendous backache, because when we go to sink down, there's this tucking under there. I was getting a bit worried about this, so I went up to my teacher and I said, "Joseph, I'm getting a lot of aching in my back." And she put her hand on her back and said, "Yes, I know you do, don't you?" And I thought, "Oh, okay, this is how it goes. This is sort of normal." Because these adjustments that we're making, the body has to, excuse me, body has to grow into them. Another reason for going very gently with these things and for trying to practice them. So just rocking your weight forwards and backwards. So this is a very good exercise, and perhaps one of the most important that we do. We get a sense of where we're in alignment with the pull of gravity, how it feels as we go out of that alignment, and what our body needs to do, particularly around the hips and the pelvis, to maintain that alignment. And I'm deliberately doing this exercise with you today without bringing my arms into the movement. So I don't want you to focus on your arms at the moment. Ideally, what I'd want you to notice is as we go forwards and backwards, and I'll exaggerate, this is sort of happening. I go forwards and my hips have to tuck under a little bit, and that draws me back, and then I fall over. I didn't get it right that time. So I'm trying to think about it, and if you try and think about it, it's deadly. There, when I'm here, actually I can settle down by doing this, by letting the pelvis tuck under. And really, again, this is a natural process for our body. It's part of our body's physiology. But it won't happen if what you're doing is this, because you'll be tightening up in your chest. Some of that tightness will go into the hips. And even if your pelvis was trying to tuck under, it will be blocked by that tightening. And then sinking down. You will probably find yourself putting too much effort into your arms. And then wild goose. And part in the clouds. And then just a few times, as we did in the chair, doing these in a little sequence. Trying to follow the movement from one to the other without rushing, but in a nice flowing way, but also quite precise. And then one more time. and shake it. Go back to your chairs. When we do a little sequence like that, it's quite difficult. It's very easy again to lose where you are. I was quite heartened in a strange sort of way, working with a chap called Grandmaster Chen Xiaowang, who is one of the most senior Tai Chi people in the world. It's very highly respected. So seeing him make a mistake in a form was like, oh, he makes mistakes sometimes. Well, of course he does. He's a human being. We all make these mistakes. He wasn't bothered by it though, and I think that's the real difference. So we want to think about our expectations of what we can do. We don't want to accept that we can't do it. We want to progress, but we also don't want to be harsh on ourselves and sort of punish ourselves when we make a mistake. We learn by making mistakes. I'm a great believer in making mistakes or allowing yourself to make mistakes and responding to them appropriately, shall we say. And I think it's very true in Tai Chi. Your posture will go out, but the good thing about it is you've noticed it. That's a step forwards, and then we can apply. Then we think about, well, we've noticed it. Now, how do I respond to it? Am I falling back into old habits of sort of punishing myself, straining in one way or another, or am I able just to bring myself back? So again, when we come to the last part of the class, Embrace Tiger, Return to the Mountain, I think it kind of encapsulates that idea. That in this sense, I think that we could think of the tiger just representing everyday life, all the things that are happening around us, good, bad, indifferent, whatever things, all things that we have to deal with in one way or another. And what we do is we always bring them back to the mountain. So let your hands drop, and then embrace the tiger. And notice what it is. How do we bring ourselves back? Are you straining in your shoulders? Or can you, even as you push your arms out, still be aware of that sinking in your hips, so that there's an automatic break to the movement. There's an automatic point where your arms want to come back towards your body, where your shoulders want to drop towards your hips. And then rest. Okay. That went very quickly. I ran out, a little bit ran out of time at the end there, didn't I? Didn't do the stepping moves, but never mind. Thank you very much, everybody. Hope
Thank you.
That. As always, do feel free to email me with any questions.
Thank you very much.
And take care of yourselves, and hopefully see you very soon.